Breaking right now on Morning News Now, emergency in the Caribbean. Hurricane Melissa set to make landfall in Jamaica later this morning, and the effects of the Category 5 storm are already being felt. The island nation now bracing for what's expected to be the most powerful storm of the season so far, with emergency crews preparing for dangerous flash flooding and landslides. The enormity of the hurricane seen from overhead. The U.S. Air Force releasing this video yesterday, taken before extreme turbulence forced them to turn away. We're tracking Hurricane Melissa's path, plus the warnings in place and how it could impact us here at home. Also developing a show of unity in Japan between President Trump and the country's new prime minister. The two leaders signing deals on trade and critical minerals as they renewed their commitment as allies.
A relationship that will be stronger than ever before. Anything I can do to help Japan, we will be there. We are an ally at the strongest level.
Meanwhile, at the Capitol, Senate Democrats under new pressure to end the government shutdown, now in its 28th day. We have an update from Washington. Plus, a desperate search in the Middle East for the bodies of several hostages still in Gaza, amid another threat to the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. We'll bring you the latest. And a dire warning, new research shining a light on a growing struggle for LGBTQ plus youth, why many say they are feeling more distressed than ever before, and what you can do to help. Important conversation in our mental health check-in today.
A change we've seen happen drastically over the last year. Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. A big news day, and we're, of course, going to start in Jamaica, where extremely dangerous Hurricane Melissa is expected to make landfall within hours. The outer bands of this historic Category 5 storm are already starting to pummel the coast. Right now, it's packing maximum sustained winds of 175 miles per hour, according to the National Hurricane Center.
Hurricane Melissa is on track to be the most powerful storm to ever hit Jamaica. Forecasters estimate it could dump up to 40 inches of rain on some parts of the island. They are warning of potentially life-threatening flash flooding and storm surge. Jamaica's Minister of Health and Wellness says at least 3 people have been killed while preparing for this storm, and incidents involving trees that were being cleared away. At least a dozen others have been injured. We're going to bring you the latest forecast and check in with an American who is stuck in Jamaica. But let's start with our George Solis in Jamaica's capital city, Kingston.
Good morning. Conditions here in Kingston rapidly deteriorating overnight. The rain and the wind starting to pick up. You can actually hear it howl if you listen closely in some instances. And officials warn the worst is yet to come. Some streets here already starting to flood. Help is already on standby for what could be a potentially historic landfall here in just a matter of hours. Now, we have been talking to both residents, tourists here stuck on the island, many of them already in their safe space, hunkering down, ready to ride this storm out. Keep in mind, people did have the option to leave before the nation's airport shut down. That time has come and gone. It is time to hunker down and find your safe space. Now, here in Kingston, we are fortunately, at least for now, looking to get some of those tropical winds and tropical rains, not so much those really catastrophic winds closer to the eye of Melissa. But again, that could change as this storm gets closer and closer. We know just about every portion of this island is going to be impacted with that historic amount of rainfall, a lot of it in the double digits for so many places. And that is what officials have been most concerned about here over the last several days, because before Melissa's arrival, there was actually a lot of rain that hit the island beforehand. That is going to increase the likelihood of those catastrophic landslides and make terrain here really, really unstable in the days ahead. So moving supplies from one place to the other is going to present a real challenge. All of the emergency shelters on the island were open. At last check, officials were concerned that they were not more full. They are riding on the assumption that a lot of people just have everything that they need to hunker down and weather this storm. And again, just to look again, you can see some of the rain, some of the winds picking up. Not as severe as they could be yet, but we know, again, that the worst here is still ahead of us. Back to you.
All right, George, thank you.
We are joined now by Peter Kong, who's from Georgia. He's vacationing with his family in the town of Ocho Rios. That is on Jamaica's northern coast, and that is also where they are riding out the storm. Peter, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, but we hope you're staying safe. How are you and your family doing this morning? What does it look like outside right now?
We're doing pretty good. The rain has been on for about 24 hours, and the wind has picked up drastically. But we're hunkered down in our hotel room, and we're hoping for the best.
Beyond hunkering down, what is it you did to prepare for this storm? Were you able to stock up on any food and supplies?
Yes, we went to the supermarket, a couple of days ago when we found out we couldn't get out. So we did get some supplies, water and some food, canned foods, and we're just worried about the water and the wind. We'll survive with the food in Jamaica.
Peter, what did happen when you tried to leave the island before the storm? When was that, and what were you told?
So when it went from a tropical storm into, they were talking about category 1, 2. We came in on Thursday, and we tried to get out Saturday and Sunday. Kingston was closed down Saturday, and then we tried to get flights out of Montego Bay, and there were just nothing. Everything was just booked out.
Wow.
Knowing you're stuck there now, how are you feeling? Are you anxious at all?
It's very nerve-wracking just waiting. Something, catastrophic can happen, and just the calm before the storm, they call it. Like, it's been no wind, a little bit of rain, nothing happening, and then all of a sudden it just start picking up, on a dime.
Wow. Peter, what's happening at the hotel where you're sheltering? Like, what are you hearing from staff and employees or officials there?
So we have to say shout out to the staff at Rio. Last night about 11 o'clock, they did, when they realized the storm might be hitting at the time for lunch, they did drop off food for my entire family up here for tomorrow, just to write it out, just in case if they can't open up anything for us.
Is the theory that you're going to stay in the room to ride it out? Do they have a place to put you? And have they given you sort of any guidance on once the storm is through, what you should be doing after that?
So they did put out an announcement in the lobby where everybody goes to eat, on what to do. So they're trying to keep us safe as much as they can.
Any word of needing to evacuate?
No word on evacuation yet.
All right, Peter Kong, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Please stay safe out there. We'd love to check in with you. We're thinking of you and your family.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman for a look at Hurricane Melissa's latest movements.
Yeah, Angie, good morning. What can you tell us? What's the latest?
Hi, good morning, guys. I can tell you that this is now officially the 8th strongest hurricane on record. With that latest update at 5 a.m., we saw that the pressure is down to 901 millibars, so putting it past Katrina for strength-wise, and that is no surprise. When you really look at the structure of this system, you can see how cleared out the eye is. It is crystal clear. We got great video from the hurricane hunters yesterday. There is another hurricane hunter plane on the way there and going to make some passes through the system to get one kind of final last look at some of those details as this system makes landfall in Jamaica later today. We've got winds at 175 miles per hour. Could we potentially see a lower pressure or maybe a little stronger winds by the time we get that latest that newest update? Maybe. Either way, it's not going to change the scenario for what folks in Jamaica like Peter are going to be dealing with here for the extended period. We've got it moving northeast right now at 5 miles per hour. We did eventually see that northeasterly turn that we were expecting into the overnight hours, still crawling along at just 5 miles per hour, though, and of course going to make landfall as a Category 5, the strongest hurricane ever to make landfall in Jamaica on record. Here's the timeline. Looks like late morning, early afternoon, so daylight hours. Likely, you can see, of course, west of Kingston. Kingston no longer in that cone, but Montego Bay is in the cone. We'll probably see a landfall somewhere near Black River in Jamaica, and those hurricane force winds are going to extend well out from the center. So where you see this red shaded area, those are hurricane force winds. So we're expecting, of course, the strongest, the worst of those winds to be right in that confined center where the eye wall is, so Cat 5 plus. And then as you extend out, you'll notice those hurricane force winds places like Montego Bay as we get into the late morning and late and early afternoon hours. Now, this is going to speed across Jamaica. We'll see it kind of take aim at Cuba later today. It does interact with some of the topography of Jamaica. We've got mountains there, so that's not going to do a whole lot when it comes to weakening the system before it impacts Cuba later today. It'll still be a Category 4. Folks there are going to see the hurricane force winds, of course, and the extremely heavy rainfall as well. And then it'll kind of speed along across parts of the Bahamas, and then we'll watch for Bermuda to potentially have some impacts as we get into the later parts of our work week. But let's specifically talk about some of those winds, because we've already had an really ample amounts of rain falling across this region. So the grounds are saturated. That means that not only are we going to see, guys, just a much easier time of things, of trees falling and stuff like that, but we're also going to see these destructive wind gusts over 100 miles per hour for multiple days at a time, or for multiple hours throughout the day today. And then on top of that, we've got additional rain. By the time we end up, seeing this system work across Jamaica, we could be talking about 30+ inches of rain across that region. The landslides, the mudslides, all going to be incredibly difficult. And we've got the storm surge that we're going to look at 9 to 13 feet. So a multitude of issues, likely isolated communities, power outages, and the works for multiple days probably.
And that's the big thing, is like the wind's obviously going to be a big part of the story. But once that storm goes through, the real danger is going to be all the rain, the flooding for perhaps days afterward that they'll be dealing with.
Yes, exactly. And dealing with communication is going to be trouble. Obviously, the power outages, all of that is going to be, multiple days to come.
All right. We will be on this all morning. So, Angie, thank you very much. Well, the severe weather is not limited to the tropics. In Florida, a possible tornado ripped through parts of the Panhandle. Then thunderstorms brought flash flooding to other parts of the state. And dangerous conditions were felt all across the southeast. Here's NBC News correspondent Aaron Gilchrist with more.
Heavy rain and strong wind pummeling Florida's Panhandle. The powerful storm ripping parts of the roof off this hotel in Mexico Beach before dawn, sending it careening into a mobile home park across the street.
With the power lines down and RVs on their sides, it could have been an awful lot worse.
This couple from Athens, Georgia, tossed around inside their RV as it flipped. Rescuers had to rip out the windshield to save them.
I said, we're going over, and we just went. This is the first time I've ever been flipped over and messed with like this. Yeah, Mother Nature got mad at me.
Craig Wilbanks needed 4 stitches in his head. The possible tornado also sent 2 other people to the hospital. A cluster of thunderstorms dropping more than 14 inches of rain in some parts of Florida, a major road collapse in Mount Dora, and dangerous flash flooding in Titusville. Staff at the Space Coast Executive Jet Center forced to move this plane to higher ground. A van nearly colliding with this fire engine.
I've never seen one of these spots before.
Off Louisiana's coast, look at this funnel cloud and a second forming right beside it. In Mississippi, an EF1 tornado carving a path of destruction, sending debris flying near this restaurant. Back in Mexico Beach, Florida, drivers battling a deluge driven by ferocious wind, the remains of homes and debris strewn across streets.
I was very, very scared. I thought this could be it.
Aaron Gilchrist, NBC News.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Well, back in Washington, the government shutdown is entering day 28, and things remain at an impasse in the standoff between Senate Democrats and Republicans. This is even after the largest federal workers union called on Congress to end the shutdown now.
In a statement yesterday, the president of the American Federation of Government Employees said, quote, "Both political parties have made their point. It's time to pass a clean continuing resolution and end this shutdown." Today is the day that a majority of federal workers are set to miss their first full paycheck.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona joins us now with the latest. Mel, good morning. So there are some important meetings happening today. We've got Democrats holding an in-person caucus meeting, and then Vice President J.D. Vance plans to meet with Senate Republicans. So is the focus out of these meetings reopening the government, or right now are we sort of trying to do some of this stopgap stuff to try to get some relief to people who are feeling the consequences of this lapse in federal funding, get any of these workers paid?
Yeah, well, the stated purpose of the J.D. Vance meeting is actually about tariffs, because Democrats are trying to force a trio of votes this week on these bills that would essentially block some of Trump's tariffs. And Republicans have been increasingly uncomfortable with those tariffs. And so the White House really wants to make sure that Republicans stay in line on that issue. But of course, the shutdown is going to come up. That is heavy on everyone's mind. And J.D. Vance is expected to take a larger role in the shutdown talks, especially with Donald Trump overseas right now. And one thing that Republicans are debating is whether they should put these standalone bills on the floor this week that would provide some relief to some of these various pain points, whether that is funding SNAP, which is due to run out of money next week, or if it's paying these different groups of federal workers, paying the military. That is something they're debating internally, and so I'm sure they're going to try to take some guidance from the White House. Meanwhile, Democrats holding their own meeting, and as you mentioned, they're facing some pressure from some of their own allies, like the biggest union representing federal workers, that are now calling on them to cave. We'll see if that changes the calculus, but so far they are not moving off of their position.
Mel, whenever there's a major stalemate in the Senate, we hear rumblings about the so-called nuclear option that would end the filibuster, get rid of of that 60-vote threshold. As we learn in our poli-sci classes, the filibuster gives the minority party the power to delay a bill, potentially sink it through endless hours of debate, unless you get those 60 votes to overcome it. Are Senate Republicans considering that at all right now?
Well, this has been something that has come up sporadically throughout the shutdown. Certainly, there's some on the far right who are pushing to nuke the filibuster, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. But for the most part, Republicans are extremely resistant to this idea, especially the GOP leadership, because they're playing the long game. They know eventually Democrats are going to control the Senate at some point in the future. And that filibuster is one of the last guardrails protecting the institution and making the Senate really what the Senate is. And so at this time, there's not any serious consideration to this. Of course, if Trump gets involved and starts pushing Republicans, that could change things. Right now, though, that is not something that they're actually putting on the table.
Mel, tomorrow, 4 weeks into this government shutdown, that actually makes it the second longest in U.S. history. Also, hitting that mark means even more federal workers are going to miss a full paycheck. Who's going to be impacted next here?
Yeah, starting today, air traffic controllers are going to miss their first full paycheck. Some of them are already starting to call in sick. They're having to pick up second jobs in order to make ends meet. And so that is really fueling concern about increasing air travel delays. There's also a question about whether the military will get paid on Friday. The Trump administration did move money around to ensure they did get a paycheck on October 15th, their last paycheck. Unclear whether the administration is going to be able to find the money to pay them on Friday. And meanwhile, as I mentioned, those SNAP benefits set to run out on November 1st, a critical food aid program. So this pain of the shutdown only continuing to grow, guys.
All right. Melanie Zanona, thank you very much.
President Trump is in Japan for the second leg of his three-country Asia tour. Earlier today, the president met with the country's recently elected and first female prime minister. He praised her leadership and said the U.S. and Japan are allies, quote, at the strongest level. The two leaders then signed the framework agreements on trade and critical minerals. They also met with U.S. troops at a naval base in central Japan.
This is all leading up to a highly anticipated meeting between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea on Thursday. Now, China has a near monopoly on the globe's rare earth minerals, which they've weaponized in trade negotiations with the Trump administration. But both sides appear optimistic that they will reach a deal.
NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander is traveling with the president. He's in Tokyo with the latest. Peter, good morning. So we know trade's at the top of President Trump's policy agenda on this trip. Yeah. Catch us up on his time there so far and the agreement that he reached with Japan.
Joe and Savannah, good morning to both of you. The president's actually addressing business leaders even as we speak right now, wrapping up the second stop of his Asia tour, the first of his second time as president here. He started the trip in Malaysia, now in Japan, meeting with a lot of Asian allies, really as an effort to sort of counter the growing influence of China, not just in this region, but throughout the world. Specifically today, the president signing an agreement alongside the first female prime minister of Japan to help in terms of a cooperation deal as it relates to those rare earth minerals that are critical for the United States, for all countries, frankly, to be used as part of microchips and beyond. A lot of this coming in the wake of the COVID pandemic that demonstrated the need for the U.S. to have other channels beyond China to access that sort of a resource. But broadly speaking, the topic of trade is really, as you know, driving the conversation. It was interesting to watch Sunday Takaichi, again, the prime minister here, who was just got that post less than a week ago, took place last week, noting the way that other foreign leaders have been able to cozy up to President Trump, greeting him, saying that she would be buying a fleet of F-150s that Japan would be using, gifting him a golf bag as well. The president then showering her with praise, really an effort to try to warm up or maintain the warm relationship that exists between these two countries.
Peter, expectations for President Trump's upcoming meeting with China's President Xi Jinping on Thursday led to record highs on Wall Street yesterday. Both the U.S. and China have expressed optimism that we're going to have this framework agreement on trade between the two countries. What details do we have so far?
Yeah, you make a good point already. They have the framework agreement. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent telling us that now they're looking to formalize an agreement between the two. Not clear when it could be signed, but certainly could be finalized when President Trump meets with President Xi Jinping to take place in South Korea on Thursday. Significantly, the first time the two men will meet in person in 6 years. Certainly the first time the president's going to see him since returning to office here. The president and his allies have indicated that that threat of an additional 100% tariff they were warning they would slap on Chinese goods coming to the U.S., that's now off the table. So that's a big difference maker and certainly helped with what we've seen from the markets, that they feel bullish that this is going in the right direction. But critics also argue that this is the president, in effect, claiming victory, claiming he has solved a problem of his own making after threatening a lot of those big tariffs and slapping additional tariffs on China since coming to power again in January. So we'll watch the way it all plays out. There was obviously some discussion about fentanyl that we expect that they will focus on here, as well as the purchase of soybeans by China, which has been a real issue for many farmers throughout the plains of the United States, who are concerned that they aren't receiving access to those to the Chinese market that they really badly need.
Major issue here for farmers in the States. One more thing we want to ask about, Peter. Yesterday, the president said he would be willing to extend his trip to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Has North Korea even responded to this invitation? Is that a realistic possibility or just a little chatter?
Yeah, I think I would lean on the chatter in terms of that. We haven't heard from the North Koreans on it specifically, but we're hearing basically from, the parties, the White House and beyond, that this is not, there's no expectation there's going to be any meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un this week. Frankly, the two haven't spoken or haven't had any means of conversation, the president indicated, in quite some while. It was a question posed by reporters, and per usual, the president said he'd be open to it. He'd be glad to stick around if Kim Jong-un were to show up. But again, I think you can put a wet cloth on that idea. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, certainly not on this Asia visit.
All right, Peter, thank you so much. A Minnesota man is accused of making a disturbing online threat targeting Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now he's facing a federal charge. The suspect allegedly posted a TikTok video offering $45,000 for her assassination. NBC News Chief Justice and National Affairs correspondent Kelly O'Donnell has that story.
A disturbing new threat discovered by a scrolling TikTok user. A post that offered tens of thousands of dollars to kill Attorney General Pam Bondi. A 29-year-old Minnesota man, Tyler Maxon Avalos, now faces one federal charge for transmitting that threat that investigators tracked on social media. According to the FBI, a TikTok post linked to Avalos read in part, "Wanted Pam Bondi, preferably dead," and referred to a reward of $45,000. Court documents include an image, which we are not showing, with a photo of Bondi with a sniper scope red dot on Bondi's forehead. TikTok, Google, and Comcast, parent company of NBC, helped the FBI trace the suspect, according to the affidavit, which also states Avalos has a criminal history, convicted of stalking and domestic battery. Bondi declined comment, but has pledged the DOJ will root out threats in this heated environment.
We cannot allow this political violence to continue any longer.
This suspect was released with a requirement to wear a GPS tracker, and he has not yet entered a plea. We're also tracking another high-profile case, and the judge overseeing the trial in the political assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk has granted the suspect's request that he can wear civilian clothes, not a jail uniform, for future court appearances.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, mass layoffs coming to Amazon. The company announcing 14,000 jobs are getting cut. We'll tell you what we know.
Up first, new information about that daring heist at the Louvre Museum and the pair of suspects now under arrest. We'll be right back.
We're back with the latest out of the Middle East, where Israel's prime minister is accusing Hamas of violating the ceasefire agreement. The Israeli prime minister's office says the Red Cross handed over the remains of one deceased hostage to the Israeli military yesterday. What was returned has since been identified as the remains of a hostage who had been previously returned. The prime minister says this is a, quote, clear violation of the agreement by Hamas.
The recovery of the 13 remaining hostage bodies in Gaza has been a sticking point in the fragile ceasefire plan brokered by the U.S. between Hamas and Israel since it took effect earlier this month. Now, Hamas has said the destruction and rubble from years of war in the enclave have hampered their search efforts for these remains.
NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley is in Tel Aviv with the latest. Matt, good morning. So what more can you tell us about the remains that were returned to Israel, and what could this mean for the ceasefire?
Yeah, I mean, guys, we're talking about human remains, so this is a pretty macabre, pretty grim story. But what we're seeing here, according to the Israelis, is that this body belonged to a young man who was killed on or shortly after October 7th. He was one of the people who attended that concert, the Nova Music Festival. And according to the Israelis, his body had already been handed over back in 2023. But then again, more remains were handed over back in March of last year, in 2024. So this is the third time that we've seen Ofer Zafarti's remains handed over to his family. If you can imagine how wrenching that must be for his family to have to take his body in pieces, years apart from each other. So this is still, as you mentioned, a deeply vexing issue for the Israelis. The Israelis believe, according to people that I've been speaking to, they genuinely believe that Hamas is withholding these bodies deliberately to use them as leverage in the future. But Hamas had made clear, it's worth noting, that they were going to struggle to find these bodies, that a lot of them are buried under tons of rubble, as Gaza has been almost completely leveled, and that some of the people, some of the commandos who had killed these hostages have since been killed themselves in the fighting. And also, some of these bodies are thought to be buried in areas that are now controlled by Israel, beyond that so-called yellow line to which Israeli forces were obliged to retreat as part of this ceasefire deal. So lots of complications and lots of reasons why Hamas might not be able to find these bodies. But as you mentioned, this really is testing very, very deeply this ceasefire.
Like you said, Matt, just heartbreaking all around. Let's talk about next steps here. I mean, despite it being so fragile, the U.S. has been working to try to move on to these next steps in President Trump's 20-point peace plan. They've proposed, our viewers might remember, an international force to oversee Gaza, to oversee the agreement, keep the ceasefire in place on the ground there. It's unclear now which countries would provide troops, but we know Israel has expressed which nations they do not want to take part. What more can you tell us, and how close are we to something like this happening?
Yeah, we've heard this over the past couple of weeks. There's one country that really comes to mind, and that is Turkey. We heard this from Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, from Gideon Saar, the foreign minister, and even from Marco Rubio, America's Secretary of State, saying essentially that Israel would get to choose which countries it was going to be allowed to participate in this international force. To put it very simply, the Israelis and the Turks hate each other at this point. It used to be a cozy relationship. Turkey is a NATO ally, but Turkey's President Erdogan has made it clear that he detests Benjamin Netanyahu. He has hosted Hamas officials, and he's repeatedly compared Netanyahu to Adolf Hitler. So there is no love lost between these two men, between these two countries, and that's why the Israelis have singled out Turkey as one country that they don't want to see participating in this international stabilization force. Now, most of the countries who are flirting with the idea are Muslim and Arab countries, like the wealthy ones in the Gulf region, moneyed through oil wealth, places like Indonesia and Malaysia. But again, as you mentioned, it's totally unclear. We really haven't heard much at all about this very, very complex and controversial proposal. We don't know which of these countries would be willing to participate. We've heard almost no indication or expression of appetite they even want to.
All right. Matt Bradley reporting from Tel Aviv. Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. Well, let's stay with overseas news and get more on the breakthrough in the Louvre jewel heist. We're learning new information about the two suspects captured in that investigation, while the race is still on to find the others allegedly involved and the jewels themselves before it is too late. NBC News International correspondent Raf Sanchez has the latest.
We're learning dramatic new details about the arrest of two suspects in the Louvre jewel heist. Both men are in their early 30s and have criminal records for jewelry theft. One arrested at Paris's Charles de Gaulle airport just 40 minutes before his flight to Algeria was due to take off. That's according to Chief Brigadier Axel Rond, a police official and union rep. We're dealing with experienced criminals who are known to the police and the justice system, he says, adding, there are more than 150 police officers working tirelessly 24 hours a day to recover the jewels. He told us officers from an elite unit tracked the suspects for several days after matching DNA left at the Louvre crime scene to a police database. Somewhere inside of this vast police headquarters is an interrogation room where the suspects are being questioned by detectives. Under French law, they can be held without charge until Wednesday evening. But officials say at least 2 gang members and possibly a wider network are still at large. And so far, no sign of the stolen treasures.
Are you confident you'll find the jewels before the gang chops them up?
Unfortunately, in these investigations, we often find the perpetrators, but only some of the stolen items.
But that official also says it's encouraging the arrests were made here in Paris because it suggests the treasures may still be in the city. I'll send it back to you.
All right, Raf, thank you very much. Well, coming up, we are continuing to follow breaking news out of the Caribbean. Hurricane Melissa set to make landfall in Jamaica this morning as a powerful Category 5 hurricane. We'll bring you an update.
Plus, first comes love, then comes marriage. But what happens after the baby in the baby carriage? The new research shedding light on how having kids impacts couples' relationships. The weekly check-in is next here on Morning News Now.
We are back with more on our top story this hour. Hurricane Melissa, the monster Category 5 storm, is expected to make landfall in Jamaica later today, maybe later this morning, midday, with sustained winds speeds topping 175 miles per hour.
Officials there say at least 3 people on the island have already died trying to prepare for this catastrophic storm. Forecasters are predicting parts of the island could get up to 13 feet of storm surge.
We have NBC News correspondent George Solis. He is live for us from Jamaica's capital, Kingston. George, good morning. We were just showing some live feeds to our viewers exactly what it looks like, but tell us what you're seeing. What are conditions like? How have they progressed?
Hey, good morning, Savannah and Joe. Yeah, today is the big day. We are just hours potentially from this historic landfall. Here in Kingston, conditions have been deteriorating overnight. We've seen a lot more rain, a lot more wind. Don't be fooled by this lull. We've seen some debris already flying behind me. You can see some of these palm trees and fronds. We're going to see a lot more of that here in the hours ahead. Roads here in Kingston already flooding, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. We expect a lot more flooding, catastrophic flooding, infrastructure failure with some of these projected winds, especially at higher elevations. This storm, no matter how prepared officials are, admit that this is going to be a game changer here for the island. They have been through so many other hurricanes in the past, from Gilbert, Ivan, Beryl last year. But when you talk about a Category 5 storm slamming this island, it is just going to leave an untold level of devastation. And while there are resources getting in position to help once this storm passes, getting them here is going to be a challenge, especially if the airports take a hit, especially if roadways are washed out. The messaging from officials at this point is to hunker down until this storm passes, guys.
So beyond that message of hunkering down, George, just what are officials doing to prepare in the coming hours, considering that this is on track to be the worst hurricane to ever hit Jamaica?
Yeah, so officials have been briefing daily. They have opened shelters across the island here, many of them still not full, which is concerning them, but they do feel that a lot of residents have heeded the warning. They have stayed off the roads. They have got the necessary supplies. A lot of store shelves were starting to run barren with supplies. A lot of people that we've spoken with saying their plan is to stay in place. Now, officials say because of the hurricanes of the past, they have been able to stage resources and supplies where they think it's going to be needed most. They've also been talking to a lot of outside agencies to basically deploy where help is going to be needed, wherever the devastation will be the worst. But again, the challenge here is going to be getting it there once the storm passes. Again, we're looking at potentially another briefing here today. So during these lulls, the only thing that you can really do is just sort of canvass, maybe look at some safe places to take refuge while you can, because again, once this thing starts to really pick up, it's going to be a very unpredictable event, guys.
Yeah, I mean, literally where the expression "the calm before the storm" comes from, right, George? Because I do think viewers are looking and it's like, okay, it doesn't look so bad yet. We also do know, our Andrew Lastman told us last hour, this is going to head actually a little bit west, it seems, of where you are, west of Kingston, but hit somewhere like Montego Bay. What do we know about the track and where people are anticipating this to be the worst?
Yeah, so not a meteorologist, but everything that we have been told is because of the eye of the storm. That's where obviously the strongest winds are going to be concentrated. Where this goes, that is going to be where the devastation is most rampant. The concern is in areas like Montego Bay, Ocho Rios. These are tourist hubs. This is where a lot of American tourists and people like to spend their time, a lot of the scenic beaches, a lot of the resorts. We've already seen some reports and images of people there who are concerned and afraid. We've talked to people, Americans who are there, some are on their honeymoon, who are worried about what this storm is going to do. But again, at this point, there's really not a whole lot they can do except wait for this storm to pass.
All right, George Solis, stay safe, and we'll check in with you in a bit. Thank you very much.
Changing gears now, time for our weekly mental health check-in. This week, we're looking at a new study about the mental health of our nation's LGBTQ+ youth.
Also, do kids really kill the romance for couples? Well, a new study may shed some light on the subject.
Joining us now for these mental health headlines is Dr. Robbie Ludwig. She's a psychotherapist and the host of the Pivot with Robbie Ludwig podcast. Always good to have you with us. So let's start with this new report. It comes from the Trevor Project, which is a suicide prevention and crisis intervention group for LGBTQ+ youth. The study tracked about 1,700 queer youth over a year, discovered some really concerning findings about their mental health. We know over the last year, we've seen a lot of policies nationwide, not to mention just a lot of rhetoric targeting the queer community, especially trans youth. Tell us more about this research and some ways that we can work to improve this situation.
So the research was really interesting, and what they found was that when this population did not have access to mental health care and treatment, there was an increase in depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideations. And when they did have access to care, that it really did help their mental health and sense of overall well-being. And they found that, the transgender and non-binary youth do have a heightened risk. The upside about this study showed that even when these mental health services were not as available as they should be, when friends and family and school systems were supportive, it did help them to feel better and have a sense of reduced mental health risk.
Dr. Ludwig, next up, this one that we also just teased, this is coming from an international study, talks about what happens with couples when you have kids, the stress that comes along with it, what it means for your romantic relationship. What did this one tell us, and is there any advice that you'd give to parents?
Yeah, so this study compared parents to those who don't have kids, and found that those who don't have kids have increased romance and satisfaction with their lives. And this is true at the beginning. When kids are young, it can be tremendously stressful for the parents, and they tend not to focus on romance as much. And the key here is when your kids are young, it's important to focus on each other, to be affectionate in small ways, hugging, holding hands, have a date night when you can just focus on the two of you without kids. And the good news is this happens for a period of time, like the first 2 years. And then once parents kind of get the hang of things, they tend to do better and feel more loving towards one another.
It's almost like there should be classes just for that while you're doing all the other things, preparing.
Totally.
All right. Let's get into this article in Psychology Today. It found a sense of belonging early in your college career is important for your overall health and success. Some of us maybe a few years removed from college years. Still, there's, I think, some useful advice here, some takeaways that we can pull from these findings, right?
Yeah, so, they really looked at a sense of belonging. And when you looked at college students during the most, milestone transition they can experience, that when they found friends and a group or felt supported and belonging, they did better at school academically. They tended to be able to tolerate some of the more challenging times because of this support network. And it even led to not only better academics and well-being, but also future success in terms of networking for future careers. So that sense of belonging is so essential in terms of human beings making it through challenging times, especially during the college years.
There's some colleges, too, that are really zeroing in on this right now and doing a lot to make sure connection happens the moment kids arrive on campus. Yeah. Dr. Robbie, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We also want to note if you or anyone you know is struggling, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That number is 9 888. Coming up, under review, the NBA rethinking league policies after that gambling scandal involving current and former players. We're going to bring you the latest.
And she's the hostess with the mostest. But is Martha Stewart's style of entertaining unrealistic? One reporter wanted to find out, and oh boy, did she. She's going to join us next on Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Let's get to some of the morning's top money headlines, starting with a big story, the historic layoffs coming to Amazon.
NBC's Emily Lorsch joins us live with that and other Wall Street headlines. Hi, Emily. Good morning.
Hey, guys. Good morning. Yeah, some major changes expected from Amazon. The company is preparing for one of its biggest rounds of layoffs in years. Amazon says it will cut 14,000 jobs from its corporate workforce, giving most 90 days to find a potential new role internally. This comes as the online retail giant looks to trim costs after heavy pandemic hiring. And the NBA is cracking down after a major betting scandal rocked the league. Following a federal indictment that alleges players leaked information for gambling purposes, it's launching a broad review to protect the game's integrity. It will focus on so-called prop bets, injury reporting, and new AI tools to flag suspicious betting patterns. Finally, that morning cup of joe is getting pricier. The average U.S. price of ground coffee hit $9.14 a pound in September, up 41% from last year. What's pushing prices higher? Tariffs on imports from Brazil, Colombia, and Vietnam, plus tough weather conditions are tightening supplies. But relief could be brewing. Lawmakers have introduced bipartisan legislation to exempt coffee from President Trump's tariffs. And guys, that right there is why I make my coffee at home.
There you go. It is cheaper. It's always a good plan.
Thought about that.
Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, a week from today, Entertaining, that is the book that put Martha Stewart on the map, is being re-released. This is more than 40 years after she said it helped change her life.
Since then, it has been a staple of her book collection, inspiring readers to at least try to craft the perfect dinner party. To celebrate, Washington Post food reporter Emily Heil tried to recreate one of the classic parties from the book. And as you can see, it was a lot.
I recreated her neoclassic dinner for 8, a 4-hour sit-down affair she once made for guests visiting from China. Naturally, it took almost 3 full days of prep. I went to the market to buy a leg of lamb and made several trips to Trader Joe's for flowers and ingredients. Martha had me polishing silver, measuring out 2-inch carrots, baking French bread from scratch, and Googling how to peel a tomato.
She joins us now to let us know how it all went. Emily, good morning. Okay, French bread from scratch. Come on, girl. You really took it all the way. This was the neoclassic dinner for 8 to 10. That's like one of the sort of themes and menus that's in this book. I mean, just that 20-second clip there, totally daunting. I know you did cocktail hour all the way through dessert. First, just what stuck out about this particular menu of all the options she's got in the book? And like, is this sort of like a culinary marathon, essentially?
It basically is, but let me tell you, it is not the hardest menu in that book, which is kind of why I chose it, because it was actually one of the ones that was actually not totally bananas to try to pull off. So there were actually ones that were far crazier, like a tempura party for 16, because can you imagine like sitting around frying food for like hours and then, you know, trying to entertain your guests at the same time? Or like a midnight omelet supper for 30. And, you know, like that was not going to happen. So actually, this was one of the more doable menus in the book. And it did take a ton of effort. Those artichokes in particular almost slayed me. I almost did not survive the artichoke course. Let me tell you, fighting with 8 artichokes and trying to clean them and get them ready was really something else. But in the end, it actually ended up really lovely. And, you know, despite all that work, it actually ended up being quite a lot of fun. So guests had a great time. And it really showed you that the Martha Stewart way of, you know, excellence and making things elegant and lovely can kind of pay off. I mean, it is a ton of work and certainly not for an everyday, but, you know, it was special for sure.
Here's the deal. I mean, because you're not an everyday, you're an experienced hostess. But you say you were nearly reduced to tears twice in the process. I understand artichokes were one reason. To be fair, I barely know how to eat an artichoke, let alone prepare one. But in the end, I mean, what did your guests think, and what does this say about the standard Martha has been trying to set for decades now?
Well, it's aspirational, right? We're not going to do this every week. And I think that there is something that Martha Stewart has really taught us in this 42 years since this first book of hers came out. And she's become such a part of our culture and the way we think about entertaining and domestic arts, is that she has a high standard. We're not always going to live up to it, right? Entertaining can be a little more fun, a little more relaxed. And certainly you don't have to be, breaking down in tears, which yes, nearly happened. But you can do it a little more casually than Martha Stewart wants you to or tells you to do. But it's just something to aspire to and to really respect the ways in which, these things can be complicated and meaningful, though.
Let's talk about the book itself. I've been trying to get my hands on it because this really has been a thing online. People are talking about it on TikTok. I'm like texting my mom, like, do you have any of these in a bin somewhere? I know you do. Because online, an original copy, they're going for like $250 and things like that. I mean, Martha never really went away, but it certainly seems like she's had a resurgence. Like, what do you think it is about her enduring popularity?
I think that she's found newfound popularity with younger people because, they're seeing people trying to get this book, online and auctions, and maybe they're looking at it too. But Martha Stewart is in this wild kind of new era where she's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She's posing for Sports Illustrated, the swimsuit edition. She's in this sort of like diva era. And I think that like young women in particular maybe connect with that and see like she's really built something incredible and kind of deserves respect for that. So there's newfound interest in this book. And yes, it can be really expensive to find the original editions. And I actually bought one online, but I bought it much cheaper because it didn't have that beautiful cover on it. So I was able to get it for like $40.
And half the pages were ripped out.
Yeah.
But beyond that.
But not the neoclassic dinner for 8 to 10. Yeah. Emily, thank you very much. Really fun to have you with us. Love that you did this.
Breaking right now in Morning News Now, impact imminent. Hurricane Melissa just hours away from making landfall in Jamaica. Air Force footage offering a dramatic look inside the eye of this monster system, while officials in Cuba and neighboring Caribbean nations brace for impact, expecting catastrophic winds and torrential rain. Our Angie Lastman is tracking Melissa's latest path and how it could affect those of us on the East Coast. Also this morning, we're coming up on a full month of that shutdown stalemate in Washington. Top lawmakers still playing the blame game while thousands of Americans grapple with a stark reality. Traffic controllers and TSA staffers among the critical federal workers missing today's scheduled paycheck. The delays now piling up at some of the nation's busiest airports, and workers now making tough decisions just to make ends meet. We are covering it all. Plus, the coral crisis off the Florida coast. It is scientists racing to revive the state's once picturesque reefs after a pair of vital species were declared functionally extinct by dozens of researchers. And later in the hour, we're doing the time warp again. It's a spooky season cult classic still going strong at 50. So actually brought our Angie Lastman along for her first Rocky Horror Picture Show experience to show her what all the hype is about. It was not a midnight screening, it was a 10 p.m. screening, which is still pretty late, and it goes well past midnight, so it was a good time.
I love it. Good morning, I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. We are, of course, going to start this hour in Jamaica, where people are bracing for Hurricane Melissa. You can see a bridge on your screen. It's just outside the capital of Kingston. It's already underwater. You can't see the bridge. The powerful Category 5 storm expected to make landfall in the coming hours with sustained winds of up to 175 miles an hour. Forecasters warn it could be the strongest storm to ever hit Jamaica.
Jamaican officials are urging everyone to shelter in place, warning that the storm could trigger catastrophic flooding, storm surge, and landslides. NBC News correspondent George Solis is in Kingston, Jamaica, tracking the latest developments.
We're just hours away from this historic landfall. Here in Kingston, conditions have deteriorated overnight with some debris starting to fall. Roadways across the island are already starting to flood, and unfortunately, the storm has already claimed lives before it has even made landfall, and officials fear the worst is yet to come. Hurricane Melissa is taking direct aim at Jamaica, with tourists stranded on the island and residents hunkering down.
We are real worried because it might just rip the whole place apart.
Melissa has already claimed lives there ahead of its arrival.
We've had 3 deaths related to the preparation of the storm.
Even before the powerful storm's arrival, its presence is being felt.
We will have a storm surge above 17 feet in many areas. We will have between 30 and 40 inches of rain in many areas. And you will have 160-mile-an-hour winds. That is a risk to life, livelihood, and to even modern infrastructure.
Winds whipping up and the rain coming in. Water washing over this bridge.
Hurricane sounds horrible outside. It just sounds as if somebody's pouring buckets and buckets of water.
This stunning satellite image capturing lightning flashes inside Melissa's eye wall. The storm so powerful, even a NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft had to turn back. Local shelters taking in those at risk. And Americans from the Cajun Navy on standby to help out.
There's going to be, people could be trapped for months. This storm is more powerful than Hurricane Maria, more powerful than Katrina.
While some tourists left the island, others forced to ride out the storm.
You know, I got my wife and kids here, also got my mom, my parents. You know, as long as we get through the wind and the rain and everybody is safe, that's all I ask for.
Now, there is consensus that getting resources here after the storm passes could be a challenge. Number one, the airport here in Kingston is barely above sea level. So if this storm surge is as predicted, that could be a challenge. Not just that, infrastructure could take a hit and roads could be very treacherous after Melissa passes. Back to you.
George Solis, thank you very much. Stay safe.
For more on this, let's bring in Senator Abka Fitz-Henley. He is the state minister in the office of the Prime Minister in Jamaica. He is in Kingston along with George. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Just tell us, Senator, how's the situation where you are right now? What are the conditions like?
Good morning to you, Joe and Savannah. Well, I tell you what, I've done a few interviews yesterday, and I indicated that things were calm here in capital city, Kingston. That has definitely changed this morning, overnight into this morning. We are feeling the effects of Hurricane Melissa. Strong winds recorded overnight in Kingston and indeed in other sections of Jamaica, including Western Jamaica, a section of the island in central Jamaica, south central Clarendon as well, and one of our parishes southwest on the coast of Jamaica, St. Elizabeth, recording strong winds, a lot of showers, heavy rainfall. It is not quite calm, as I had indicated yesterday for much of the interviews I did. Jamaica is very much feeling the effects of Hurricane Melissa. And I tell you what, landfall is projected to take place around noon today, a couple hours after that. So really, we have not seen the worst of it.
Yeah, and we know, I mean, hurricanes often pass near Jamaica, but a direct hit, less common. And in addition to that, it seems that this is on track to be the strongest ever to hit Jamaica. How are you all preparing, the Jamaican government? What's being done to prepare for this storm?
Yes, you are correct in your assessment. We had Hurricane Ivan about 18, 20 years ago, I believe. And we had Hurricane Beryl last year, which skirted the coast of Jamaica. The last real direct hit was Hurricane Gilbert 37 years ago. So the administration of Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness is aware of the dangers which face Jamaica and Jamaicans, and indeed we have been taking a number of steps to prepare. Dr. Holness has been on the front foot in terms of exercising decisive and present leadership concerning the situation. He has advised and instructed that as many shelters as possible should be open to accommodate people who want to move from flood-prone or low-lying areas to higher ground. Indeed, 881 shelters are open across Jamaica. Up to yesterday, the update was just over 1,000 people have sought solace, sustenance, and refuge in those shelters. We've also issued to members of parliament, those are elected representatives in Jamaica, $1.5 million each to each of the over 60 constituencies to assist people to purchase supplies and prepare as best as possible for the storm. Because the objective of the administration of Dr. Holness is to protect as many, preserve as many lives as possible, and to put people in a position to protect their property.
Senator Abka Fitz-Henley, we appreciate your time this morning and sharing this information with us. Please continue to stay safe and keep us updated, all right?
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the interest in what is happening in Jamaica, and take very good care of yourselves as well.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. We will check in. Let's bring in Steve McKinley. He's from Oklahoma. He and his wife are not able to get a flight out of Jamaica before the airports closed. They are now sheltering in place in Ocho Rios. That's on the northern side of the island. Steve, good morning. Thank you very much for talking with us. Hope you're staying safe. Just first, how are you all feeling this morning? What are the conditions like right now?
You know, the reality is starting to set in about really how serious this event is. It's been a long few days waiting, and we're just not really sure what to expect. But the reports y'all are giving and what we're hearing, it doesn't sound very good.
Not a lot of hurricanes in Oklahoma, so I'm guessing this might be your first experience with one. Tell us, how did you and your wife prepare for this storm, and just what's your biggest concern right now?
We haven't. We're in a very safe facility. The Couples Tower Isle is a very well-made structure, so we feel very safe as far as making it through this event. But our concern is what's going to be looking like after the event. And you know, the country is in for a real devastating event, and it may be a while before we can even get an airport opened up or get a flight into. So we are really uncertain of what the future looks like, and we're just kind of waiting to see what happens after today and maybe assess then and see what happens.
What happened when you tried to leave Jamaica? When was that, and what were you told?
You know, we were scheduled to be here until this Friday, the 31st. So our vacation was a little over about 2 weeks. And during the middle of the week, or Saturday morning, they got up and started reading more of the reports and everything. Cheryl and I, we made the decision it was time to go ahead and start making plans to leave early. So she got on the phone, and we had airline tickets scheduled for Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock, getting some of the last seats, I guess. And then Saturday afternoon, about 4 o'clock, we got the text that our flight had been canceled. And then they were going to close the airport at noon. So we just barely missed. We already had our arrangements to travel to the airport and ready to go, but that didn't happen. So here we are.
Must have been stressful.
We're hoping you can still get out by Halloween this Friday. What has the communication been like, whether it's from government officials or just the staff at the hotel? Do you feel you're getting all the information you need to make the right decisions?
Yes. We have been very fortunate here at the facility. The staff has, had daily briefings to keep us what's going on with the government and what the ministers and all that some are finding and projecting. They have boarded up downstairs. They have moved us off the top floor and put us down on a safer second floor. We've got a very nice facility. They've come up with plans of where to meet and all this. They've got a nice generator, so we've got power to part of the building. And we've been able to charge phones and stay on the internet and everything. So our real concern is losing communication with our family and friends back home and letting them know how we are, where we are. And I'm sure that's the concern of a lot of people that are here and families that are watching and waiting and see what will happen.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Steve McKinley, we are thinking of you and your family. Thank you very much for sharing your experience. We'd love to keep hearing how it goes. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm sure Steve is very interested in knowing more about the path of Hurricane Melissa. Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us now with the latest.
Angie, what do we know right now?
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. We know that we've got this latest update as of 8 a.m. We didn't get a whole lot of changes, but what we did see is a little bit of a quicker forward speed. Not going to make a whole lot of difference when it comes to the actual impacts that we've been kind of outlining for days and days ahead of Hurricane Melissa's landfall in Jamaica. Still a Category 5, still looking incredibly healthy. I have a feeling that when we get to 11 a.m., we'll have a better idea of exactly how strong of a Cat 5 this system is as it makes landfall. We have a Hurricane Hunter's plane making a couple of passes through this system before landfall, so we'll get some better detail from inside of it here as we go through the next couple of hours. Now, let's talk about winds first, because this is going to be multiple hours as this system crawls across the island of destructive hurricane force winds, especially for the western half of the island. Where you see the red shaded, those are hurricane hurricane force winds. They extend out about 25-ish miles from the center of it. Of course, that eye wall is where the most destructive of those winds are. So we will likely see widespread damage across the western half of this island. But notice places like Kingston, sure, you're not in the hurricane force winds, but you are going to be dealing with those extended periods of tropical storm force winds. We've already received ample amounts of rain across the island, so the grounds are saturated. It doesn't take much for us to see some falling trees. And of course, debris will be flying here as we get through at least the late morning, early afternoon, and even late afternoon hours as this system kind of crawls across the island. We're also going to see the potential for some of that storm surge on the backside of this system for the northern part of the island. So heads up there on the eastern side as it comes ashore. That's the southeastern side, rather. That's where we're going to see those 9 to 13 feet of storm surge. And then we've got to gear up for potential impacts for Cuba, guys. Category 4, 140 miles per hour here. Overnight hours, we're likely going to see this. It'll interact with some of the topography of both of these islands, but we've got so much warm water and deep, deep warm water in this region that the strength of this system, the health of the system right now, it doesn't look to be all that impacted before it makes landfall for Jamaica and Cuba through the next 24 to 36 hours. Now, there's those winds. Already seeing hurricane force wind gusts on the island for some locations. We're going to see upwards of 100+ mile per hour wind gusts, guys. And then we've got all of this catastrophic flooding that we are expecting, multiple double-digit kind of rainfall totals already coming in. And by the time we get through this, we could be talking about 40 inches of rain. The mudslides, the landslides, we know that the mountainous regions of this area are going to make all of that worse. So it's not just the coastal flooding, it's the inland flooding as well. Think places like Helene, the damage that we saw, of course, with the mountainous regions there in the flooding. This is going to be the same kind of situation, dire situation, humanitarian probably issue for multiple days here as we get through this system, but still beyond it, it'll be quite impactful for power outages, communication issues, et cetera.
The fact that it's going to go through Jamaica, it could still be Category 4 when it reaches Cuba, tells you just how powerful it is.
And when you look at it on the satellite as a meteorologist, it gives you a pit in your stomach where you're like, this is an incredibly healthy tropical system, textbook kind of stuff where you just don't see any sign of what we call an eye wall replacement cycle. Oftentimes you'll see it kind of regroup its eye wall, and that does help weaken it. So any weakening would be great ahead of the landfall, but we just don't see that with this system. A lot of us expected to. Unfortunately, not the case, and this is a really dire situation for people in Jamaica. Haiti will also see ample amounts of rainfall. Cuba up next, and then across the Bahamas, and even Bermuda down the line late into the week. We'll see potential impacts for them, too.
Thanks, Angie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll keep chatting. Well, President Trump is in Japan this morning. It is the second stop on his 5-day tour of Asia. Earlier today, the president addressed thousands of U.S. Navy sailors aboard the USS George Washington at the Yokosuka Naval Base. He praised Japan's first female prime minister who joined him on stage. She said that Japan would work with the U.S. to, quote, ensure peace and security in the region as both countries work to combat rising threats from China. Earlier in his visit, President Trump signed 2 framework agreements on trade and minerals with Japan. Trade is, of course, at the top of the president's policy agenda on this trip. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander is in Tokyo with the latest.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good morning to you. The president is wrapping up his visit here in Japan. He's going to head to South Korea tomorrow for that highly anticipated sit-down with China's leader. But today, with U.S. troops as his audience, President Trump leaned into his deployment of soldiers for domestic law enforcement. And despite fierce criticism of that policy by Democrats, the president insisted people do not care if he sends the U.S. military into U.S. cities as long as they're safe. President Trump this morning making a dramatic entrance aboard the USS George Washington in Japan, saluting thousands of U.S. Navy sailors.
From now on, if we're in a war, we're going to win the war.
And as legal battles mount over his sending troops to some U.S. cities, the president saying if necessary, he'll go further with those military deployments.
We're sending in our National Guard, and if we need more than the National Guard, we'll send more than the National Guard, because we're going to have safe cities. We're not going to have people killed in our cities. And whether people like that or not, that's what we're doing.
Earlier, President Trump meeting with Sanai Takaichi, who just last week became Japan's first female prime minister.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal, and I want to congratulate you on that.
Takaichi privately telling President Trump she plans to nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize and announcing plans to buy a fleet of Ford F-150s as a show of goodwill to the president during trade talks.
Anything I can do to help Japan, we will be there. We are an ally at the strongest level.
President Trump concluding his stop here in Japan, visiting with business leaders. That U.S.-Japan alliance increasingly critical to counter China's rising influence, with President Trump set to meet with China's President Xi Jinping Thursday in South Korea, their first face-to-face visit in 6 years. The president expressing confidence that a trade deal could be finalized there, backing off his threat to slap an additional 100% tariff on Chinese goods.
It's a big meeting, and I think it's going to work out very well, actually.
And as for the president's suggestion that he was open to meeting with North Korea's authoritarian leader Kim Jong-un this week, there is no expectation that that's going to happen. Still, President Trump today did meet with those Japanese families whose relatives were abducted by North Korea and said it is an issue that he'll be discussing. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
Hi, Peter. Thank you.
The government shutdown is dragging on. It's now day 28, and a majority of federal workers did not get their scheduled paychecks this morning. That includes air traffic controllers. We're on the job right now. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello is at Reagan National Airport with the latest. Tom, good morning.
Hey, Joe and Savannah. So at this very moment, the air traffic controllers in the tower up above us, they are working despite having not gotten paid. They hope they get paid when the shutdown is over, but the bills are coming due right now. And in the meantime, TSA officers who didn't get paid on Friday and they make less than air traffic controllers, they're on the job right now. The face of this government shutdown is not Capitol Hill or an air traffic control tower. It's the people caught in the middle.
I'm going through a hard time.
Like LaShonda Palmer, a TSA local union president in Philly, worried about her TSA colleagues working without pay and how she and they will pay the rent on Saturday and put food on the table.
My utilities come, they're due. My car note is due. My insurance is due. It's hard. My granddaughter said she was sad because she didn't have a costume. She's 6. But that broke my heart.
And now air traffic controllers are going without pay while still managing the busiest airspace in the world. Pete Lefevre is a controller at Washington Dulles. What's it like to be in your job and not getting paid?
It's unfair. We come to work. We're aviation safety professionals. We are American workers. We are here to ensure that the flying public is safe every time they get on an airplane.
At LAX and across the country, flight delays in the thousands, as some controllers call out sick, citing stress, some taking side jobs to pay the bills, with many passengers supporting controllers.
Yes, 100%, but we'd rather not think about it as we're about to get on our flight.
Meanwhile, food assistance programs for nearly 50 million people, including millions of children, expire on Saturday.
I don't have a clear budget for my food. It's only from SNAP.
Subsidies for Obamacare also set to expire, sending insurance premiums spiking. While on Capitol Hill, Republicans and Democrats are blaming each other.
It's almost been a full month since the Democrats shut down the government.
And there is Donald Trump overseas, not even paying attention to this crisis.
Now, since our interview, we understand somebody did buy LaShonda's granddaughter a Halloween costume. Separately, 730,000 government workers right now are not receiving a paycheck. The largest federal union is demanding that both sides on Capitol Hill immediately end the shutdown and get the pay to the people who've already earned it. Back to you, Joe and Savannah.
All right, Tom, thank you.
All right, well, this morning, a judge in Tennessee is threatening sanctions against the Trump administration if officials don't stop talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia's criminal case in the state.
Abrego is the Maryland father who was wrongly deported to El Salvador, later brought back to the U.S. by the Trump administration. In another hearing in a separate case in Maryland yesterday, well, that gave us a better picture of the government's plans for Abrego. He has become an international symbol of President Trump's mass deportation policies.
Let's bring in NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Graham back for more on this. Gary, good morning. So the judge in Tennessee issued a couple new orders yesterday. And the first, this is what you were just mentioning, he pointed to specific comments by Attorney General Pam Bondi on Abrego's case. Here's part of this. He said, quote, government employees have made extrajudicial statements that are troubling, especially where many of them are exaggerated, if not simply inaccurate. First, what are these comments that have led to these new orders, and then what would those potential sanctions look like?
Yeah, Savannah, for months, the Trump administration and the White House has been making comments about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The judge focused in on two specifically. One from Attorney General Pam Bondi back on June 6th, when she held a big press conference announcing his return to the United States. She called him, quote, a smuggler of humans and children and women. Of course, that's an allegation. She said it as if it were a fact. Judge Crenshaw also narrowed in on DHS Secretary Kristi Noem's comments in late August, where she called Abrego a, quote, MS-13 gang member, human trafficker, serial domestic abuser, and child predator. Of course, we have no evidence any of that is, in fact, the case. Now, Judge Crenshaw pointed to a local rule in that district that says he can sanction attorneys that perhaps are saying things outside of court, and he's relating that directly to the Trump administration because the Trump administration is the client in this case. The attorneys are representing the Trump administration, and so there could be fines, there could be potential contempt proceedings for Bondi, Noem, or anyone else in the administration.
Gary, we had that other hearing yesterday that was in Maryland. A federal judge called this virtual hearing just days after Abrego and his attorneys were informed the Trump administration now wants to send him to the African nation of Liberia as soon as this Friday. What's the latest there?
So this is the fourth African nation that the Trump administration has tried to send Kilmar Abrego Garcia to. Ghana said no. Uganda said no. Eswatini said no. Liberia apparently has said yes. But Abrego's team has serious concerns about the conditions that he may be under if he is sent to Liberia, including would he be set free? Would he be in detention? And would Liberia just send him right back to El Salvador, the country that started all of this, guys?
Gary, with all these cases that Abrego's in the middle of, what is next for him at this point? And help our viewers understand how this is sort of happening, given that this started with this wrongful detainment.
Yeah, this started 228 days ago when he was picked up from the parking lot in Hyattsville, Maryland, put on a plane to El Salvador. He has been in legal limbo ever since, and that is where he remains at this hour. He's in an ICE detention facility in Pennsylvania right now, but that's historically not meant to be a punitive location. It's supposed to be a holding facility where people are temporarily before they go to their next location. So right now, perhaps at the end of the week, he could be sent to Liberia unless this Maryland judge stops this from happening. He's very much up in the air right now, guys.
All right, Gary, thank you very much. There's much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including how millions of Cubans are preparing for a direct hit from Hurricane Melissa in just a few hours.
First, after the break, a pair of suspected Louvre looters now in custody, but burning question remains, where are the jewels? We're going to take you to Paris for the latest on that investigation next.
We are back now with the latest on that brazen daytime robbery at the Louvre last week. We're learning more details about the two suspects arrested in connection with the heist, while those priceless jewels are still nowhere to be found. NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us with more from Paris. Hi, Raf. Good morning.
Savannah, good morning. Those two suspects have now been in custody for more than 48 hours. That's more than half the period that they can be held without charge. But a police official tells us this morning they are refusing to talk as the search for the missing treasures continues.
This morning, the suspects arrested in the Louvre jewel heist are under interrogation, but refusing to cooperate and won't reveal where the stolen jewels are hidden, police tell NBC News, while the rest of the crew is still on the loose. The two suspects are in their early 30s, have criminal records for jewel theft, and were living in a suburb of northeast Paris around 4 miles from the Louvre. That's according to Chief Brigadier Axel Rond, a police official and union rep. We're dealing with experienced criminals who are known to the police and the justice system, he tells us. Interrogators can hold them without charge until Wednesday evening. The hunt for the jewels is being led by officers from the elite Brigade for the Repression of Banditry, or BRB, which featured in the French movie The 36th Precinct. They match DNA recovered from the scene to a police database, Ron says, tracking the suspects for several days before moving in, arresting one man at Paris's main airport just 40 minutes before his flight to Algeria. The BRB also took charge after Kim Kardashian was robbed at gunpoint in Paris in 2016. Robbers making off with $8 million of her diamonds. 8 people were convicted in that case, but most of her jewelry was never found. In the back rooms of Paris's Diamond District, the talk is of little else besides the Louvre heist. Nadine Zitou runs her family diamond business.
Is there some kind of protocol for alerting the police if someone's trying to sell it?
Oui, nous avons des lignes dédiées.
Yes, we have dedicated teams directly connected to the police to make sure that kind of information is passed on as quickly as possible, she says. Investigators will need every scrap of information they can as they race against the clock.
So police have to decide by tomorrow night whether to charge or release these two suspects. Assuming they do bring charges, Savannah, we are likely to learn more about the identities of the suspects and also about the evidence that prosecutors and investigators have gathered over the last week and a half or so. A police official also telling us in terms of the search for the jewels, it is encouraging that those arrests were made here in Paris because it suggests that the gang wasn't able to flee the country and just possibly those treasures are still here somewhere in the French capital. Savannah.
All right, Ralph, thank you very much.
We are following developing news this morning out of Turkey, where a strong 6.1 magnitude earthquake rocked the western part of that country.
NBC News International correspondent Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with our world news in 60 seconds. Hey, Claudio.
Savannah, good morning. Well, that's right. The epicenter of that earthquake was in western Turkey, but it was felt all across neighboring provinces, including the capital, Istanbul. Now, Turkish officials said at least 3 buildings collapsed, but there were no immediate reports of casualties of those because especially those buildings were unoccupied since they were damaged by a previous quake. At least 22 people were injured by what authorities described as panic-related falls. Let's go to Sudan now, where the paramilitary force has taken control of its last stronghold in the western Darfur region. Local medical and aid groups say dozens of civilians have been killed in the fighting between the military and the rebel rapid support forces, while the United Nations accused the rebels of executing civilians. The army's withdrawal from the city of El Fasher leaves over 250,000 people under the control of the paramilitary force. Let's end this tour of the world in Japan now, where one of the most legendary sushi chefs in the world turned 100. Jiro Ono is the founder of Sukiyabashi Jiro, a tiny but very popular 10-seat sushi bar in Tokyo, and the oldest chef in the world to have won 3 Michelin stars for more than a decade. But he says that even as a centenarian, he's not ready to retire because he said that work is the best medicine and it's the secret to longevity. Well, I guess therefore to reach 100, I'll have to do lives for you guys for another 49 years.
There we go.
So long dreams of an early retirement on the beaches of Italy. Well.
I won't be here for all those 49 years, so I wish you luck, Claudio. Thank you. All right, coming up, we've got our eye on Hurricane Melissa as it slowly makes its way up the Caribbean this morning.
Yeah, we've told you about Jamaica. When we come back, though, how officials in Cuba are preparing for a direct hit in just less than 24 hours. That's next. Stay with us.
We're back with our top story this morning. The extremely dangerous Hurricane Melissa, the Category 5 storm, is expected to make landfall in Jamaica within hours now. It's on track to be the most powerful hurricane to ever hit the island.
Meanwhile, parts of Cuba are currently under hurricane warnings as well, as the island braces for landfall sometime overnight into the early morning hours. Forecasters warn of catastrophic winds and potentially life-threatening flash flooding in some areas.
NBC News reporter Ed Augustin is live in Cuba's capital of Havana. Ed, good to have you with us. We understand the worst of the storm expected to hit the eastern part of Cuba. Obviously, you're north of Jamaica, so it'll take a little longer for the storm to get to you. But what are the conditions right now, and what are officials telling people to prepare for?
Yeah, and one of the reasons that this hurricane is so very dangerous is that it's slow moving. So that means it's going to plow through Jamaica and likely Cuba even more slowly and potentially leaving even more damage, even more death. The main message from the Cuban government has been evacuate. And people are bracing. People are bracing for the storm to hit eastern and possibly even central Cuba around 2 o'clock in the morning local time, so during the night. The lights typically here in Cuba are cut before electricity is cut before a hurricane hits, so as to reduce fire hazards. And the main message, evacuate, stay safe.
How have officials been preparing for the storm, and what resources are being made available to people there?
A lot of resources have been made available. Cuba, traditionally, I mean, I should say at the moment, Cuba is going through a terrible economic crisis that is blunting the state's ability to provide for citizens' needs in all manner of things, from healthcare to food to transport to just keeping the lights on. But it's worth flagging that historically and traditionally and up until today, Cuba has been a model for disaster preparedness when it comes to hurricanes. The United Nations has said as much. In fact, when a hurricane hits Cuba, Cubans are 10 times less likely to die than when a hurricane hits the United States, comparing it to the probability of a US citizen dying. That's how good they are at dealing with hurricanes, and the key to their success is organization and mass evacuations. And I think a comparison of the numbers between Jamaica and Cuba really brings that out. So last evening, yesterday night, according to the Jamaican government, only 1,700 people, approximately, had been evacuated to shelters. That despite mandatory evacuation orders. You had tens of thousands of people that should have been evacuated that, according to the Jamaican government, had not been. According to the Cuban government, over 400,000 people have already been evacuated, and NBC News has been able to verify that tens of thousands of people have indeed been evacuated. So, for example, in a part of Guantanamo, which is Cuba's poorest, easternmost province, over 30,000 people have already been evacuated from an area called El Valle, the valley, very, very flood-prone, dangerous part of the country to live in during a hurricane. They've already been evacuated by the state on 60 buses. I spoke yesterday to a woman who's an evacuation coordinator in a small city called Bayamo in the province of Granma. Sorry, she told me that in the local secondary school just up the road from her, 60 people had already been evacuated. These people live near rivers and dams at high risk of flooding. And she said that there was a doctor there in the school, there was a nurse there in the school, there was food, and that the buses had been collecting people, these rickety old buses, since Sunday. So this is a very well organised, systematic, methodical evacuation effort, and people are being moved out of danger. And that's one of the reasons, we'll see, fingers crossed, that there's no huge loss of life this time, but that's one of the reasons why the loss of life in Cuba when it comes to hurricane is so much lower, or tends to be so much lower, than the other countries in the region.
Ed, has it always been the case that Cuba has done such a good job with these preparations, or did something change in the recent past?
The history shows that it's ever since the 1959 revolution. Whatever you think of the Cuban Communist Party, whatever your politics are, left or right, despite clear human rights violations and authoritarianism, Cuba has managed disasters and hurricanes very, very well ever since the 1959 revolution. If memory serves me correctly, the first major hurricane was Hurricane Flora. I forget if that was 1959 or 1960. And already you saw the state starting to deploy really significant resources and even major figures. So, for example, Fidel Castro going on the front lines and risking their lives, literally risking their life, his life in that hurricane, almost drowning in a jeep, trying to save people. When you talk of that, it often sounds like propaganda. It almost sounds like myth. It's the sort of thing that you can imagine that's a story that's been spun. But I've spoken to academics that have written about this. I've spoken to people who were there and lived it. And I think that you had top-level politicians from the early days leading by example and just mobilizing resources to make sure that on this question, these things were taken very, very seriously. And that's one of the reasons why the United Nations has for decades recognized Cuba as a model when it comes to hurricane preparation and disaster management.
Ed Augustin in Cuba, please continue to stay safe. We appreciate your reporting this morning.
Now let's get a closer look at what's making news in the world of politics. We're going to start with a Republican effort to cast self-described Democratic Socialist and New York mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani as the new poster child of the Democrats.
NBC News senior national political reporter Sahil Kapoor has the latest on that and some more headlines from Washington. Sahil, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. We begin today in politics with Republicans working to make New York City mayoral frontrunner Zohran Mamdani the face of the Democratic Party. He was a top focus of yesterday's House GOP leadership press conference, with Speaker Mike Johnson seizing on House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries' endorsement of Mamdani and repeatedly using phrases like socialist and Marxist to describe the 34-year-old candidate. It's a familiar tactic, and the House Republican campaign arm has a new memo this morning called a battle plan to weaponize Mayor Mamdani in battleground districts, citing controversial comments Mamdani has previously made on policing, economics, and Israel. He has focused his campaign on affordability. And in Illinois, 2 National Guard members are saying they would refuse to follow orders to deploy in Chicago if told to as part of President Trump's immigration crackdown. The 2 Guard members, who are running for Congress, told CBS News it was disheartening to go against one's community like this, that it feels illegal, and that it makes it difficult to be a soldier right now. It represents an unusual act of defiance inside the ranks of the military. And here in Washington, President Trump revealed Monday on Air Force One that he had an MRI during his recent visit to the Walter Reed Medical Center. The 79-year-old president didn't provide further information other than to say it was perfect. When asked for details, Trump referred to his doctors, who he claimed have given him some of the best reports they've ever seen, at least for his age. The White House did not previously disclose the MRI, saying vaguely that the visit to Walter Reed was a follow-up evaluation after his physical with imaging and lab testing. And that is a look at what's making news in politics this morning. Guys?
All right, Sahil, thank you so much.
Coming up, a coral crisis is brewing just off the coast of Florida.
When we come back, what researchers there say is behind 2 vital species critical to protecting the Sunshine State shores being declared functionally extinct, and how it all might impact the wider environment under the ocean's surface. That's next on Morning News Now. We're back now with some disturbing news about the world's ocean life. Scientists say elkhorn and staghorn corals, which are vital to protecting Florida's coastline, are now considered functionally extinct. For more on what this means, let's bring in Ross Cunning. He's a coral biologist at the Shed Aquarium in Chicago. Good to have you with us. So let's start with some of the basics here. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection says there are about 80 species of coral off the state's coast. Tell us why these 2 are especially important.
Right. So all of the corals that live off Florida's coast are important contributors to building that coral reef structure, that habitat. But these species, the elkhorn and the staghorn, have been some of the most important reef builders in Florida for the last 10,000 years. So as they grow, their skeletons produce this complex 3-dimensional architecture that's literally the foundation of the reef. So if you think of the reef as a city, these corals are the buildings. And these elkhorn and staghorn are some of the biggest, most important buildings that we've had in these cities that provide the habitat for all the other fish and animals that live there.
Wow, a great way to put it. You're one of the scientists who authored this paper that declared these 2 species, what Joe said, functionally extinct. What does that mean, and what caused this?
That's right. So a functional extinction often precedes a full extinction, but it means that these species aren't completely gone yet. So there are still some of them left in Florida, but their numbers are now so low that the species overall can no longer contribute to their ecological function. And that is, of course, building the reefs.
Is it too late to bring them back, or are there ways we can stimulate regrowth like conservationists have done at coral farms in other parts of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. So their numbers are so low now that we think natural recovery at this point is extremely unlikely. Corals spawn, and to reproduce that next generation, their gametes have to meet in the water column and fertilize to produce new coral larvae. And we just think that there are so few of them for that to be happening successfully without intervention. But there are a number of interventions that scientists are pursuing to try to bring these species back, to try to give them another chance. But we know that we must actually boost their heat tolerance in order for them to survive. The heat wave of 2023 was so severe and the temperatures got so hot that it surpassed the limits of survival of these entire species. So we need to in some way boost that tolerance. And one way to do that might be by breeding the most heat tolerant individuals that we have, some of the survivors of the 2023 heat wave, or to bring in new genetic material from outside of Florida. So crossbreeding Florida survivors with individuals from other places where they're naturally growing in warmer waters and maybe better adapted to higher temperature.
Ross Cunning, this is an important topic. Glad you could join us this morning to talk more about it.
Fascinating research.
Thank you for having me.
Let's now get a look at what's making financial headlines this morning. Education giant Chegg is set to lay off a major portion of its workforce.
NBC's Emily Lorsch joins us with that and some other money news. Emily, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, another company this week announcing major layoffs hit by the AI wave. Online education company Chegg is slashing nearly half of its workforce, about 400 employees, after losing traffic and revenue to tools like ChatGPT and Google's AI search results. Once worth nearly $15 billion, Chegg has lost almost 99% of its value since 2021 and is now restructuring to stay afloat. And Google is teaming up with utility giant NextEra Energy to bring Iowa's only nuclear power plant back online. The revival of the facility is backed by a 25-year agreement for Google to buy the power for the tech giant's AI operations. The move comes alongside similar partnerships aimed at securing low-carbon energy to meet growing AI demands. The plant, which closed in 2020, could begin operating in early 2029, pending approval. Finally, those with Apple TV are about to get a whole new experience from Spotify. The streaming giant has rebuilt its app for Apple TV users, adding video podcasts, music videos, and mobile features like queue management, song lyrics, and Spotify DJ. While music videos aren't available in the US or Canada just yet, the updated app is ready for downloading from the App Store right now. Savannah and Joe, this is giving me real MTV vibes, watching music videos on your TV again. I remember those days.
What's old is new again.
I do that all day long, to be honest with you. I go to YouTube on my TV and watch music videos. I love doing it. It's great. It's fun. Thanks, Emily.
All right, now to the World Series and an instant classic that turned into a marathon. How long was the game? Well, this will give you an idea. Before the start of the 18th inning, the organist played the theme to the movie The Never-Ending Story. In the bottom of that inning, nearly 7 hours into the game, Dodgers first baseman Freddie Freeman launched a solo walk-off home run, lifting his team to a Game 3 win over the Toronto Blue Jays. Final score 6-5. Baseball fans might remember Freeman also hit a walk-off grand slam in last year's World Series against the Yankees. We should not overlook Shohei Ohtani, who hit 2 homers last night, 2 doubles. Oh, yeah, and he was intentionally walked 4 times. Oh. The Dodgers now lead the series 2-1. That is a long game.
Wow, your voice was good.
Kudos to those who stayed up all night and are watching us right now.
Coming up, it's a kooky cult classic that's still revving its engines even after 50 years.
It wouldn't be spooky season without talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, a raucous theatrical phenomenon that for some reason has eluded our own Angie Lastman. Until now, I had a chance to show her what all the hype was about, so don't go anywhere. Madness takes its toll. Next. Finally this hour, it is spooky season, just days away from Halloween. We're also celebrating the 50th anniversary of a cult classic, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. First hit theaters back in 1975 and is still going strong today, especially with its late-night showings. Our meteorologist, Angie Lastman, had never seen the film at all, so I got to show her what the hype is all about.
How'd you do, At 50 years old, this cult classic is twice the age of many fans who are lined up and dressed up to watch.
You are?
Janet.
Janet.
I'm Brad. Magenta. I'm Eddie. I'm Columbia.
And I'm Riff Raff. They're here for a late-night showing of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, some seeing it for the first time.
Are you ready?
I want to say yes, but I don't really know what I'm ready for.
For Angie, it's the one thing she can't forecast. The campy movie centers on a young couple stumbling into a mansion filled with kooky characters, including a scientist named Dr. Frankenfurter. I'm just a sweet transvestite. Our show featured a shadow cast, actors dressed up as the characters, mimicking every moment in front of the screen.
What do you guys know how to medicine?
What is it about this show that 50 years later, it still is just this incredible community that loves to get together and watch?
I'll be honest with you, I have no idea.
Perhaps it's the props used by the audience, or the lines they scream at the screen, known as callbacks.
On a night out.
It was a day's in.
Janet!
Fully gone!
Or maybe it's this. The iconic jump out of your seat song. you really did a time warp and went back to when the movie premiered in 1975, you discover a rocky start. It flopped. But then...
What? You've never been to the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Late-night screenings fueled a resurrection.
It's fun. It's like a release. You get to scream, throw things.
Decade after decade.
It's not a movie. It's an experience.
In 2015, on the 40-year anniversary, I sat down with the cast.
The fans just keep getting younger and younger, and you have to wonder.
No, we're getting older and older.
Oh, that's what it is. I knew it was something.
The thing that resonated for me more than anything was "Don't Dream It, Be It," which was a really good slogan.
Don't dream it.
A message that resonates with all ages.
The movie is R-rated, but the crowd is X-rated.
In the back of the theater, we found Betty and Ivan, ages 85 and 88.
I thought, why not? I'm game.
One time, the Shadowcast had a guest from the original cast, Susan Sarandon, invited by the actress playing Janet.
What was that like?
Unbelievable. It was honestly an out-of-body experience.
It was an out-of-body experience for Angie, too.
Final thoughts?
I don't know if I'm more or less confused than when it started, but I was entertained.
The power of a picture show with a runtime of half a century.
Okay,
You've still recovered. You're fine.
Here's
It was a few
the
weeks
thing.
ago.
The plot of the movie is confusing,
No.
but it's the shadow cast, the involvement from the audience that is like so captivating and entertaining that, I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever
wish
seen.
you were like
We had
wearing
props.
a GoPro, so I could have just seen more of your
This is
reaction
me.
throughout. Yeah.
We did have one jaw drop from you at one point. She leaned over to me and goes, "Can we put any of this in this story?" And I'm like, "No, most of it we cannot."
Like the guy said, movies R-rated, crowd X-rated.
It was an experience. You've got to go. So you've got to go.
All right, put that on the list for next year. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us. The news continues right now.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.